Hello, my name is Chef Fernando Mojica. I am here with Columbus State Hospitality Programs. Thank you for joining us today. We want to show you a really quick recipe, but also a couple of ways to get creative with a very basic recipe, right? We are going to do what I like to call soup plus two. So we're going to make a tomato soup, very basic, very simple, doesn't take a lot of time to do it, very simple ingredients. But then once we finish with that, we're going to show you a way to serve that soup. Certainly you can serve it again as by itself. But then we're going to show you a couple different variations of how to take, again, very simple ingredients, a couple ingredients, one or two, to add them to the base that you made and turn that into a different soup. So you can end up with a couple different variations. So we're going to do a tomato soup. We're going to then turn that into a Southwestern style tomato soup. We're going to turn that into a Mediterranean kind of steak with some pesto and so on, and then we're going to take another one that's a little bit more on the Asian flavors. So we're going to do a little bit of curry tomato soup. So we'll start with the basic. We have some little butter, some shallots. So we're going to melt the butter. We got about an ounce, a couple ounces of butter. So you want to low flame, low heat, right? And then you want to take your shallots and you want to do what's called, we call sweating, right? So what sweating is you want a low flame. It's very similar to sauté, but you want a low flame. You don't want any color on it. You want to cook them until they are translucent and until they are soft, but you don't want any of that high color or sear on it that you would when you're doing a sauté. All right, so we're going to let those sweat here for a little bit. Take about 5-10 minutes, maybe less, but again, very, very low flame, and you don't want to make sure that you're not burning, you're not burning the butter either. So we'll let that go, right? And after it has done, we're gonna add the tomatoes. We have sweated the shallots now. We're gonna add our tomatoes now. I have here tomatoes. I took the flesh, and I'm only using the flesh, right? So we took the seeds and the core out of the tomatoes. Just for texture-wise, you can certainly leave them, but this is what I use. It gets a little bit more flavor. Also, that will, the cores and so on will have a lot more liquid on them, so that will throw away your ratio a little bit. So we do have a little bit of tomato puree here, the tomato juice with a little tomato puree, so that will again help with that basic. So we're going to cook these for about 15 minutes or so. 15-20 minutes, let that go. We're going to add a little bit of vegetable stock later on, but we'll let this go for about 15 minutes. The tomatoes are cooked, you get that bitterness out of it, and start developing that flavor. So we'll let this go for about 15 minutes and then we'll come back. Okay, so we have cooked this for about 10-15 minutes, right? We're going to add a little bit of vegetable stock I have here. Now, you can certainly use chicken broth as well. I like to add vegetable stock or vegetable broth. You can do either one of them. We're going to let this up. We're going to bring it to a boil. Now we make this in one of our classrooms. This is stock, so it's a little darker than it normally is. We had a lot of different vegetables in here. We had, besides your basic mirepoix, we also had some root vegetables, some rutabaga in there, a lot of the vegetable treatment. So that, again, good utilization of all your food is finding ways to utilize that trimming that you have rather than getting rid of it. So we cut all these root vegetables for a function we had, and then we had all the leftovers trimmings that were certainly very good to use still. So we turned all of that into a stock. So that's why it's a little darker. You see a little bit more solids in it than you normally will do in a stock. But we're gonna let this go. We're gonna bring it to a boil. And then we're going to lower it to a simmer. It's going to simmer for about another 15 minutes or so. So that will take about a total of 30 minutes from the beginning. Once that's done, we are going to puree it and we'll be able to go ahead and do our soup. So finish up our soup. So we'll see you in a little bit. It's cooked for about 30 minutes, right? We simmer it with the tomatoes and the vegetables and all of that. So after we simmer, what we did, we transferred it to a blender and we pureed it, right? So we just ran it until it was nice and smooth. All the tomatoes were pureed all the way through and smooth. So We put it back in our saucepan right here. Now we're gonna bring this back up to a simmer, and we're gonna add a little bit of heavy cream and milk, right? That'll give it a little bit of body and a little bit of richness. Now you can certainly use just heavy cream to make it a little richer and so on. I like to use a little combination of milk and heavy cream just to balance it out, just a tiny little bit, right? So just about 3/4 of a cup or so of heavy cream, and just about 1/4 of a cup or so of milk. And we're gonna incorporate these, whisk it in, bring it back up to a simmer, and at that point you're ready to go. You're ready to serve, right? So we'll start serving here in just a minute. So we season at this point. We season the soup. We pureed it. We put in the cream. Let it come back up. Tasted it. Just a little salt, little pepper, and that's it, right? Super simple. Now we're gonna serve these with a little bit of brioche croutons. So we took some brioche bread, diced it up, and then we just toasted it just in the oven. And we have a little bit of chiffonade basil here. Now chiffonade is a term that we use for something that's cut in very thin strips, right? So herbs actually that are cut, so like a basil, like a mint, something like that. So just a little bit of chiffonade basil, a couple little strings here, just to complement those flavors. And we also have just a little bit of that brioche croutons that we toasted. So that's the basic soup, right? So that's your basil soup. I'm sorry, that's your tomato with basil soup. And now we're gonna take this base soup that we did, and we're gonna turn this into a couple different varieties. Okay, so the first variety we're gonna do is we're gonna take just about a couple cups, about a cup or so of the soup here, and we're going to put that into our containers here. We're going to start with our Southwestern style, right? We have some corn off the cob here that we did, a little bit of black beans, and we have some green peppers, diced green peppers or diced green chilies. Certainly you can use either one of them. So we're going to add that, and then we're just going to really very simply take our ingredients and just about an ounce or so of each of the ingredients here. And we're just going to let that marry, right? Let all these flavors marry, let all the flavors kind of come together. We're gonna cook the corn just a little bit, so you'll simmer it for about 5 minutes or so, and then we're gonna serve that with a little bit of cilantro, so it won't take very long to do this. Let our soup here simmer. Now we're gonna just put it right into the bowl, right? You'll have those beans, you have that corn in there, those green chilies, that will help with that. And we're just going to garnish these, right, with just a little bit of cilantro, just to kind of marry everything together and bring everything together. So, again, super simple, just different ways we can be creative with the soups. But it's the same soup and it's the same base that we've been using. But now we're getting a little creative and a little bit different flavors incorporated into the base. All right, so the soup that we're gonna do, very simple. We have a little bit of pesto here, the same soup that we did before, the tomato soup. But for this pesto, we're gonna get a little creative, right? So normally your pesto is a condiment made with pine nuts, made with cheese, made with basil traditionally, and a little bit of oil, right? So what we did was we took arugula, baby arugula, instead of the basil, and then we took walnuts instead of the pine nuts, right? So you have an arugula walnut pesto, and we're just gonna take just a couple teaspoons of this pesto, and we're just going to put it right into the soup that we made, and then we're gonna bring our soup back up to a simmer, but just enough to warm it up. You don't want to simmer for too long because it will then start to break that oil apart from the pesto, right? And it will make your soup very, very fatty and very oily. You don't want that. So you just want to warm it up just enough that it will warm up your pesto, right? And we're just gonna serve that just as it is. Let the puree baby arugula be the garnish, if you will. And so again, it will just change a little bit of the color. It will change a little bit of the texture. Now you can certainly serve these with something else that you can garnish. for it, but for this one, we're just gonna let the puree arugula be the garnish of it. Right, so the final variation that we are going to do is going to be a curry tomato soup, right? So again, same soup that we did a few minutes ago, that we turned into a couple of other varieties now. So we're gonna use a little bit of curry powder. Now, you want, what we're gonna do is we're going to take these into a dry pan, right? No oil, anything like that, low heat, and you're gonna toast your spices a little bit. That's going to, you have about a teaspoon of curry powder in here. What this is going to do, this is going to kind of release those oils on the powder and the spices, and it's going to toast a little bit, and you'll release that aroma and that flavor of the spices so that when you add the soup, it will kind of marry on the soup, and it will be a little bit just more enhanced and so on. So we'll do that. You certainly don't have to do these, but it's just, again, just a good step to build flavors and to be able to just get a little bit more punch of flavor, if you will, out of your ingredients. So this is gonna burn very fast on you, so you wanna keep an eye on it. Just a couple of minutes or so. Once you start seeing the oils kind of releasing, you'll start seeing your pan, the bottom of your pan get a little bit oily there. So you don't want to get it too hot. So once we do that, we'll just add a little bit of the soup, right? And at this point, we're going to turn the heat off, and we're just gonna let these go. Let these go for a minute. We're gonna whisk, marry it again, kind of stir around a little bit, right? What we're going to do is we're just going to garnish these with a little bit of cilantro. Once you let that flavors of the curry kind of marry together, we're just going to put it right into our bowl, right? Now, again, looks very similar to the other ones. However, flavor-wise, it's completely different. We're going to garnish it with a little bit of cilantro here, just some cilantro leaves. You can certainly add a little bit of sour cream to these, if you will, a little bit of other flavors into it, but that will marry really well. But again, very simple variations to make of the soups. We started with the tomato soup, and we turn it into your basic tomato soup. We have your southwestern style. We have one with pesto, and then we have one with curry. So very simple flavors. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a thing or two, and we'll see you next time.